Welcome to Farm Smart Live. I am Mrs. Collins. As you know, we are always here in Imperial Valley. We always try to stay local to show you what's happening in agriculture right here. And today we have a very special family that's joining us today. We are at the Imperial Olive Mill with the lovely Barioni family. And I am going to ask them to introduce themselves and share with us all about olives here in Imperial Valley. So welcome, Barioni family.
I'm Donnie Barioni Jr., and this is my wife, Angela.
Good morning.
And my daughter, Erica.
Hi, guys.
I'm fourth generation farmer in Imperial Valley, and therefore Erica is fifth, and her children will be sixth generation farming family here in the Imperial Valley since the early 1900s. And we farm a variety of crops in the Imperial Valley over the last 100 years, from vegetables to forage crops. And we also have tree crops like lemons, dates, olives, and figs in the north end of the valley. So I'd like to show you, we're here at the olive mill that Angela and Erica operate. And out on the farm, I receive our olive trees about this size, and then we plant them. And we have a 2,000 acre tree farm of the lemons, dates, and so forth. And there's 100 acres dedicated to the olive tree farm. And there are three main varieties in California that are favored: the Arbequina, Arbosana, and Koroniki. Those are, most olive varieties are from the European area or the Mediterranean area of Spain, Italy, and France, and North Africa. And so we're excited to be part of the new industry in California in the 2000s. Then the tree gets to be this size and it starts producing fruit. And we'll look at a tree with fruit on it. We are a month after harvest now. Here's some fruit. And I can take this off and hold it in my hand for you.
They're about the size of a grape?
Yes, that's right. You know, you bring up a good point. In the wine business, or in the grape business, you have grapes that are grown specifically for eating them. They're larger and more plump. And then the other grapes are smaller and crushed to make wine. Well, in the olive business, it's very similar. We have the varieties that you eat that are larger, plump fruit, but the varieties we make olive oil out of typically are smaller and are firm. You wouldn't want to eat these. You make olive oil out of them. They've been bred to do that. So this is the Taste the Grove, where Angela and Erica do shows and tastings to promote and explain the olive mill and facilities. But up in the north end of the Imperial Valley in Nyland, because it's gravelly, sandy soil, and it's in the shadow of the Salton Sea, so it stays warm. That's why the tree groves are there. They like gravelly, sandy ground. The roots like to wiggle their way through that gravel and soil, versus our clay around the center of the valley is more for produce. So up here we have the 2,000 acres of lemons, dates, and olives. And in here we have the 100 acres of olives. So these are lemons, this is olives, and we have dates, and we have figs. And so we have at each ranch, each one of these squares has a reservoir and a pumping station with filters. So think of a large version of your swimming pool and pump and filters, or a city water plant. And then we irrigate them with micro sprinklers, and we grow them all year. And then in the fall, around October, as soon as we get cold mornings, we start harvesting. And Erica, my daughter, is in charge of that with the lasers like we see with the COVID. Erica is able to use those for years now to measure the fruit as it's being harvested on the tree out here on the ranch. And then on the harvester, on the semi truck, and when we get to the mill, she manages that temperature to never let it get more than 70, 75 degrees. So that's how you make extra virgin, high quality premium olive oil, by keeping the temperatures under control. This grove here with the individual trees like this is for the events that Angela and Erica have, like tasting events, food and wine events, and classrooms like you're doing today. But actually in the orchard, the trees are grown like a hedge. They're very close together, and they're pruned to be a hedgerow, not individual trees. And the reason for growing them at like a hedgerow or a solid row after row of trees, is so you can use the harvester to mechanically tickle the fruit off of the tree. The harvester is very large, and the tree this size actually goes right through the machine. It with fiberglass bars, it beats the fruit off gently into cups that are moving, sending it over to bins. The bins get loaded on a semi truck and come to this factory 30, 45 minutes later.
About how large do the trees get, and how long do they live?
The trees can get as in other parts of the world where they have individual trees, or at home in your backyard, they can get to be 30 feet tall and 30 feet wide. But we need to mechanically harvest, because in the United States, it's hard to have that much labor do all that work. And there's efficiencies to having a lot of mechanization in a lot of agriculture. So we only keep them about 8 feet tall, like the tree you just saw. And when they're 8 feet tall, they can go inside the machine. So say 8 feet tall and 4 feet wide. And then a solid hedgerow that can go a quarter mile long. The machine turns around and comes back and does it again. And it takes about 40 of those rows to make one block, a 40-acre block. And we've now walked down the side of the factory. This is the length of the building. The semi trucks would come in here. And then this is our receiving room. You can take a look at where the fruit arrives. And again, Erica and her team began to cooperate with Angela, my wife that runs the factory. And they make sure the very first thing is they weigh the bins. We have a scale that digitally takes the weight. Then Erica does the final laser temperature measurement. And there's an example of what our bins look like. I'm sorry, we don't keep them here. We have hundreds of those bins. 50 of them can go on a semi truck. So when Erica sends the semi truck from Nyland through Calipat to us here in Imperial, then the bins are about 40 of them on the truck. We unload them with the forklift. There's a special device, and you take those bins off and you bring them over here and you dump them in this hopper. This is where the process begins. Then we have the first machinery here. Climate control is not important at this point. From here on in the rest of the factory, you'll see climate control. But here, what are we doing, Angela?
So here what we do is when we dump the fruit, this machine here will blow out some of the leaves, excuse me, some of the leaves and the sticks, because the fruit is heavy. So the fans will blow the leaves and the sticks out. Once that process is done, it comes through here, and this machine here washes the fruit. So this will be a sheet of water coming. The fruit will kind of bubble around in here for a few seconds, and then it'll come down here onto this belt here. This is a conveyor. Once most of the leaves and the sticks are removed, the olives will fall into this hopper right here, and it will start to go up to the hammer mill. This is our hammer mill. What this does is this crushes the fruit, pits, seeds, skins, the meal, everything goes into this. It starts the process.
So what happens here with the hammer mill is, as Angela said, you're transitioning from a piece of fruit into paste. This is the heaviest duty piece of equipment we have here, because it's inside. It's like a giant blender breaking the fruit down into the paste. So as it goes through this tube into the rest of the factory, we're in the process of adding some devices that would be cooling devices to cool that paste. Now it's paste. Think of a chocolate shake, chocolate malt shake is what it looks like.
That includes the seed in there also?
Yes.
The seed and everything is pressed.
Very good question. At this point, the paste is the complete piece of fruit. It's just turned into a paste, and it would be skin, meat, seed, and oil. And that's what we're going to show you inside the next part of the factory, how we separate that all out, and it all has value, and it goes different directions as we end up with oil at the end. Let's go on in the milling room now. So we start here. So Angela's showing you, this is one of 4 malaxers we have. And I described the fruit as a paste form at this point. And I don't know if you can see it, but inside here is a large blade shaped like a screw blade. And it mixes. And this is very similar to what you would see in a lot of other food facilities. You're mixing now the paste to get it agitated and thoroughly mixed for the next piece of equipment. You might ask, why do we have 4 of these instead of 1 or more? In the factory, we can choose to put different farmers in different tanks. We can choose to put different varieties in different tanks. Or if we have a high volume day, we'll fill it all with the same variety. So that's a very important tool that we have, that ability to adjust. This factory is set up to do 3 tons an hour, and we could do hundreds of acres. And what we're doing is we're starting out in, if you will, baby steps. Our orchard of 100 acres, running this mill, say out of, if you were in a car and you had 5 gears, we're in 2nd gear. And so we have a lot of capacity left as we grow the acreage in the field.
Let's break that tonnage down a little bit easier for the kids. So like, say, how many olives make up a pound?
Never thought about how many olives is a pound, but you know, say 100 olives makes a pound. Bin that we showed you in the other room, the white 4 by 4 foot bin, 2 foot tall, has an average of 1,000 pounds of olives in it.
Wow.
And that's half a ton. So 2 of those make a ton. And as Angela said, it requires 2 of those bins just to start this factory. And of course, we get a semi truck a day, so we get 50 bins in this factory a day. I told you we do temperature control throughout the entire process. And in other businesses, that's called a chain of custody. And Angela, or Erica, my daughter, as I said, uses a laser in the field when the fruit's on the tree, in the harvester, on the semi truck traveling, and when it arrives here at the mill. But Angela points out very correctly, then inside this is the most precious, important part of the factory, is where we make the magic, the olive oil. We continue to monitor temperature. We use the laser on that paste in the 4 malaxers. So Angela's pointing out we never stop monitoring quality control, and that starts with temperature control. That's why when you hear about extra virgin olive oil, or they'll call it first press, cold press, we don't press the olives more than once here. There's reasons why in large factories, much bigger than this, think of Holly Sugar size factory, they will press it over and over again to get more oil out. We sacrifice losing some oil, a small amount, to give quality. So it's only pressed once, first press. Cold press means we, again, Erica and her team are managing the temperature so that it never gets warm, even when it's a paste or an oil. It's always maintaining your temperature control.
Yes, the main thing in making extra virgin olive oil is you're constantly worried about temperature. Temperature is crucial when you're making extra virgin olive oil. And you just kind of think of rule of thumb as 80 degrees. You never want anything to be above 80 degrees. Once you hit 80 degrees, you're starting to run into dangerous territory. So everything kind of, we use that as our guideline, as our control, and we work our way down from that.
All right, so from here, after it's been homogenized or uniformly made into a nice even consistency of paste. Paste moves over here to this device called a decanter. And this, if you're in anyone's factory that does this kind of business, they would be excited about this piece. This is a piece that I don't care if you're a 10-year-old boy or a 50-year-old boy, you get excited about equipment. This is the or girl. This is the piece that's very important and very interesting. So the oil goes in here, the paste goes in here, and we separate the oil from the
solids.
The solids, the skin, the meat, the seed, as Stephanie asked earlier, the seed is even taken out. There are 3 barrels, I have it's all bolted up, but there's 3 barrels inside here. spinning at 3,000 RPM. And they're sending outside to a truck that we would have, a semi truck with big tubs, like big swimming pools on it, 2 big swimming pools. And the paste, which is the skin, the meat, the seeds, go out there, and that goes to a feedlot here in the Imperial Valley that has dairy cows. They feed that to the dairy cows, and it's very nutritional.
What happens is once this process, once it goes through the decanter, we're actually making olive oil that will come in sheets of an opaque, bright green liquid that will come out of here. And this is a very, very fine screen, a very fine sieve here. So the oil will fall through and it'll be collected into a pipe. And this will
vibrate.
Yes, it vibrates. And this will just be left what is a brown foam. That is just residue from all the skin and the pits and all that. Once it gets through this process, it's going to go over here to another separator that we call a polisher. And what this machine does is this machine spins, and what this does, it pulls out any bit of water that's left in it. And the importance of pulling water out of the olive oil is the water is what will cause your oil to go rancid. So you want to get and spoil. So you will want to get as much water out as possible. That's what happens in this process here. And once it's done, it will come out of here. And this is where the olive oil now goes into our storage tanks. And it goes in there to settle. These are our tanks where we're settling oil. And I'm going to open up this tank for you. And I'm actually going to pull some olive oil that we just made. We just finished harvesting last month. So this is going to be a little bit cloudy here yet still. So we put our olive oil into these tanks. And the reason it's a cone shape here is because this is where all the sediment comes. So this is where all the little brown particles, there will still be little bits of sediment in here. They'll settle here into the bottom of the tank, and we drain it or we purge it at this bottom valve here. But we can draw off the middle of the tank, and this is what we look at what we're pulling out of the bottom. When that becomes clear, then we're ready to take our oil and transfer it into our holding tanks, which are the larger tanks. So this, I'm going to open up and get you a little bit of oil and just show you what we've got here. So this one looks like it's settling very, very nicely, but Stacy, I think maybe you can see just a slight bit of sediment that's still right here. And this is not real clear oil, but it's pretty, it's getting there. You can see a little bit of sediment just floating here on the bottom. So this is not quite ready yet to go into our holding tanks.
About how long is that process? How long do they stay in the tanks?
It stays in here for about 30 days, more or less. Olive oil will stay stored in the tanks for up to 3 years. We do 2, wow. We don't like longer than 2. We also top our tanks off with nitrogen to take the air off the top of the tank. And that's really important as you're pulling from your tanks. So we use these tanks in our bottling room, which you're going to see in a few minutes, to also bottle. So we let it settle. Once it's clear, we transfer it into our larger holding tanks.
What is the lifespan of a bottle of olive oil?
The lifespan of a bottle of olive oil would be the same. Once you open it, air gets into it, and then it starts to degrade. So somebody probably would not or should not have a bottle of olive oil sitting in their cupboard for a couple of years. So 6 months would be a good rule of thumb for a bottle of olive oil that's been opened.
Well, it's so good, you use it up very fast.
Yes, as well you should, because it's a very good, healthy fat, which we all know we need a small percentage of that in our diet. So this is our bottling room. This is where we bottle from. You can see the tanks here. We have some other varieties here. So this is where all our bottling is done. We've got our boxes that we store here. We have our bottling machine set up real briefly here. This is our packaging table. We've got a lot going on right now with Christmas, so you can see that there's some gifts being ready to be prepared here. And this is where we store our products once it's bottled. Correct. We bottle by hand.
But if we have a large order, we can automate it.
So now that we've seen our bottling room, why don't we go and take a little tour of our store. So here's the front of our store, so come on in.
So you can purchase our product here locally here at this little store. We are also at some retailers here in the Imperial Valley, and we are retailers in San Diego. We do some farmers markets, but this is primarily where we sell the most of our wares. We do sell bulk olive oil to other olive oil companies.
How do you decide like what flavors or seasoning you want to put in your olive oil? Do you just try to think of new ideas, or how do you decide that?
We do. There are pretty standards. Most people, when they think of a flavored olive oil or one with herbs and spices, which is a dipping oil, the most traditional one is a Mediterranean style with herbs and spices in it. So we play around with different tastes.
So you can shake.
And we listen to what our customers.
Well, Stephanie, I think to answer your question a little further is, when I have to worry at the farm what varieties to plant, I always ask Angela and Erica about their marketing, and they tell me what flavors and types are selling. And so starts all the way back at the farm when you're planting trees, all the way to the finished product here in the store is based on what the customer wants. That drives whether we have a certain variety, certain flavor, all the way from the farm to the store. The customer drives what we want to produce.
Yes.
That's great. Someone's asking in the chat, some bottles say for sauteing or grilling, others say for marinades and seasonings. What's the difference?
There is no difference really. The one that you can use all of these oils for grilling, for marinating, for sauteing, for putting over fresh salads, vegetables, pasta. The only difference is the one with the herbs, and there's one with herbs and spices inside. The flavored olive oils here is just the olive oil. There should be nothing floating around inside of this. But you can use all of these, whether it's just a infused olive oil or whether it's got the herbs and spices in for any and all cooking processes.
How does the quality of the olive oil produced in Imperial Valley compare to the olive oil exported into the US?
There's very good olive oil that comes from all over the world.
In deserts.
And excuse me, Don?
In deserts.
In the deserts, correct.
Think of Israel, Morocco, Africa. La Rioja is a desert in Argentina that's very big, and it has olives for oil. So olive for oil are grown all over the world in deserts. I'm sorry, go ahead. So
the difference is we have standards here in California that we have to stick to. So sometimes you will get adulterated oil from other countries. And what they adulterated is, I mean, they put different types of oil in with their olive oil. So you might have some hazelnut oil or some corn oil or some other type of oil, and it will no longer be extra virgin olive oil. They don't have standards where they have to identify that. They are now having to have traceability where there are more strict standards where they are supposed to be divulging that information. Our olive oil is 100%. Most California olive oil is 100%. There are some companies that do blend from other countries, and they should state that on their label. So that's the difference between California olive oil and olive oil from other countries.
That is great. We want to remind everyone that we had our California Grown field trip to the grocery store several weeks ago, and there was olive oil that said California that did not come from California. It was just a marketing name that they used. So we always want to encourage everyone to source locally as much as possible, all of their food items. Could you also talk a little bit about the balsamic vinegars and the pairings and kind of how you can get creative with those?
Yes, real briefly, I'm just going to let you know that on the back of our bottle, since you touched on that, we do have here that it is a product of California, made in California. So you should look for that when you're buying your olive oil.
Awesome.
I love that it shows when it was harvested as well. That's amazing.
That's very important, is to have a harvest date on it, because you know the shelf life of your olive oil this way. So we have not started bottling our 2020 olive oil yet. So this, what you noticed here is this has a 2019 sticker on it. That's because the olive oil, as you saw, is not quite ready to be put into the bottles yet. So in another month, we will be bottling our 2020 harvest. Our balsamics here, we do not make. We partnered with a company and they make these balsamics. Balsamics go very well with olive oil. Most people like it as a combination for dipping. They like to cook with these as well. And what we like to do is we play around and with our olive oil flavors and balsamics, and we would make a suggestion as to what goes well. Maybe a spicier oil like a jalapeno oil or a jalapeno cilantro. If you didn't want so much heat with it, these vinegars tend to be a little bit on the sweet side. They're not as acidic as a wine vinegar per se. These are made from the musks of grapes, so there is no wine or alcohol in balsamic vinegar. So if you wanted to tone down a spicier one, like the jalapeno cilantro, for instance, we would probably put it with a mango or a pineapple or a white balsamic vinegar, but you can really, most of these vinegars will go with almost every, well, it will go with every one of these olive oils here. So if you want something a little bit more acidic, you would want to try probably our rosé, which is probably our most acidic here, and the honey. Those are the two most acidic balsamics here on the shelf.
What do you think is the hardest thing about growing olives?
It's not really too hard to grow olives down here. Fortunately for us, we don't have any issues with pests. It's too hot. There is a pest that does bore into the olive, but we don't have that problem here. The most important thing, or the hardest thing, I would say, is our temperatures, and that dictates when we harvest. When it's hot, we are harvesting at 4 o'clock in the morning. Many times we're harvesting before the sun comes up to avoid that warm temperature. As I said, we want to stay away from 80 degrees. So once we hit 75 degrees, we stop for the day.
Right.
And I wanted to add, when you asked about growing in the desert, you know, our lemons, dates, olives all benefit from being in the desert because we have the warm Mediterranean climate without the rain and the fog they have in the rest of California. California has a good reputation for good products, farm and grocery products, but olives especially don't like the rain and the moisture that you have in the other parts of California. They like the warm, dry deserts around the world. So we have that. And then we have the Colorado River water that the rest of California doesn't have. So even though olives don't take much water, they take less than my lemon trees, less fertilizer than my lemon trees. All those conditions that make it ideal to do olives for oil in the Imperial Valley. The Mediterranean warm climate without the pests and diseases, as Angela said. And then we have the abundant water, and then we have the labor needed.
And our pruning also is very important. That is also a very important process in growing the olives. The trees need to be pruned and pruned properly in order to have a good yield and to facilitate the tree to produce the olives.
We talked about the hardest thing. What about your favorite thing about your business?
Oh, my favorite thing about the business is the smell that comes when you're milling olives and turning it from olives into olive oil. The smell is incredible.
The smell is amazing. But also I like the end product of it. So I cook a lot. So having this in my background and in my family just gives me the opportunity to get more creative with my cooking, because I get to use all these amazing olive oils that we produce and pairing them with our balsamics. So that's one of my favorite parts.
Well, I think for me, it's seeing as the farmer the olive oil that I used to sell 20 years ago as bulk oil to food companies. Now, Angela and Erica have created a value-added product. That bottle is the thing that makes me the happiest, to see my olive oil from the farm not get lost in the supermarket in other products. It's our family product. It's value-added, coming from the Imperial Valley. I think that's very heartwarming to see a finished, polished product, and they do a good job.
Well, we think so too, and that's why we were so happy to have you with us today. And there are people asking in the chat where you are located, do you ship, and if you are online.
We are located in Imperial in Crown Court Business Plaza, which is just off of Ayton Road and Marshall Road, across the street from Alfred Distributing, Budweiser. Yes, we do ship, and yes, we are online. We have curbside pickup available for people who are still uncomfortable about coming into public places. So you can place your order online, and then we will bring it out to your car, or you can call in and place your order here, and we will also walk it out to your car if you'd like to do that as well. So we try and accommodate everybody's needs.
Before we end, can you just tell us your hours here at the shop? And you don't just have olive oil in the shop. You look like you have some other local products or small farm products as well.
Yes. So our store is open on Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. We are also open on Mondays by appointment only. And yes, we don't just have our olive oil here, but we do have some locally made jellies that come from Temecula, a lady who's got a lovely business, local honey that's made by the Asher's family, Avery Girl Honey. And we have another company that is called Bread and Flowers, and they're out of the Palm Springs area. And they make granola and bread, and they use our olive oil to make their granola and bread, actually. And so we have started carrying their granola here as well.
Very nice.
And then we have some other types of food here, pastas, risottos, things that complement that you would use the olive oil for, pestos and crackers and so forth. So to put a little gift baskets together, or antipasto trays, charcuterie boards. We try and have a few other goodies that would complement our olive oil.
Well, Stacy, unless you have anything else, I think we've covered all the questions in the chat. And once again, I just want to say thank you to everyone that's joined us today. We thank the Barioni family for your kindness and allowing us to see your operation there. And we want to thank everyone who has joined us over the last several weeks for these field trips. We will be back probably in the springtime, but please let us know if you have enjoyed these field trips so that we can provide more of you after the first of the year. But we want to wish everyone, I've got my little Merry Christmas lights on my head here to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a very safe, Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from us too.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, and thank you, boys and girls, for joining us. And maybe next year we can actually do a tour in the field, and maybe while we are processing the olives into oil, so you can see the full process.
That would be a great follow-up.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.